Welcome to another edition of Hometown Happenings. I'm Supervisor George Homan. Thanks for joining us. As we embark upon a new year, we want to evaluate the past year. We can honestly offer that despite the difficult economy, it's been a really good year for the town of Clarkstown and its government. Fiscally, the town is on the verge of a fourth consecutive year with a budget that is building reserves. This has not occurred in over 20 years and has led to the town receiving a very strong review from Standard & Poor's as it relates to our bond rating. In fact, Clarkstown has the highest municipal bond rating of any government in Rockland County. I'm really proud of the efforts we've undertaken here. It's been a lot of hard work, but our town is far better off than when I took over office and had to battle to restructure operations. In fact, I often don't speak about it, but I inherited a budget with a $5 million deficit and dwindling reserves, leading to the town being listed on a fiscal stress monitoring system for New York State. Those days, thankfully, are long over. In addition to the good news on our budget and renewed bond rating, I'm really pleased that we've undertaken some significant upgrades and capital improvements throughout the town. The biggest is the West Nyack Hamlet Green Park expansion nearing completion. This beautiful park will be among the finest in the region, with a walking trail, a boardwalk, a newly expanded Hamlet Green to host events and concerts, as well as a fully accessible playground with adult exercise equipment. Also in 2022, we invested well over $12 million in other capital improvements, including the replacement of the Western Highway Bridge, the completion of the Klein Avenue levee that removes scores of homes from the floodplain in West Nyack. This past summer, we saw 2 tropical storms. For the first time ever, residents along Klein Avenue didn't flood. Further, we replaced the roof at Town Hall and rebuilt the salt shed at the Highway Department. And finally, we commenced work on Parrott Road near the middle school, which when completed in the late spring of 2023, will greatly improve traffic and pedestrian safety. So as we consider the year ahead, we will again invest significant dollars, including millions in federal and state grants, to do a number of large-scale projects. In the first quarter of 2023, we will go out to bid on the long-awaited West Nyack Revitalization Project. This is going to be a total facelift of West Nyack, which will include realigned roads, decorative streetlights, improved drainage, and new sidewalks. We'll undertake a major renovation at the Highway Department, and we're going to replace the Snake Hill Road Bridge in West Nyack. In addition, we'll pave and resurface almost 30 miles of roads, and we're working to install turf fields at several of our parks throughout the town. In short, it'll be a busy year, perhaps the busiest year ever since I've been supervisor. All in all, it's been a good year, and the year ahead promises to be even more exciting and better. Finally, allow me to say thank you. Thank you to all of our wonderful staff who really work so hard to help serve our residents. We're truly blessed to have exceptional, hardworking, and caring staff, and the results really show. As per our show today, I'm really delighted to welcome 3 wonderful guests. Our new state senator, Bill Weber, a prolific author with local ties, Lou Romano, and in our veterans segment, Mark Woods, who really has a fascinating life story and is the current director of the Joseph P. Dwyer Veterans Peer Mentoring Program. All that and more on this episode of Hometown Happenings. Stay tuned. Welcome back. My first guest is Bill Weber, a longtime community advocate with a significant background in fiscal private sector management, who won a decisive victory last November and takes office as our new senator. Welcome, Senator Weber.
Thank you, George, and thank you for having me here today on your show.
So, Bill, I'm delighted to have you as a guest, and it'll be the first of hopefully many times on Hometown Happenings. I really look forward to working with you, as the rest of the town board does, as our new senator here. One of the things that we're really excited about, Bill, is your community background. And maybe you could tell us a little bit about you and your wife and your background with volunteerism and working within the community.
Sure. So I've been a CPA in New York State since 1994 and a CFO for a small business for the last 20 years. My wife is the assistant superintendent at the Suffern Central School District, where three of our four kids go now. Our older daughter is in college. And you're right, we've been involved in Cub Scouts, community involvement with Sloatsburg Food Pantry, volunteering our time, Rockland County Youth Bureau, and I'm proud board member of the Mental Health Association of Rockland. We like to give back to the community because we're, as someone who's a lifelong resident of Rockland County, we feel it's great to give back to the community, and it's something that we've always advocated, not only for ourselves, but to show our kids that community involvement is very important.
Right. And Bill, with your wife's career in education, and I know your involvement, and I know that's something that's been close to your heart, how has that been something that's driven you in your quest for public service?
Well, it's a great question, because most of us that live here in Rockland know how expensive it is to live in Rockland, and I would say most of us live here because of the great schools that we all attend, no matter what school district you're in. I think they're all top-notch school districts. So it's very important to me and to my family to make sure that the quality of education in our school district and the other school districts remain at a high level, and it's something when I go to Albany to make sure that the funding continues to be as much as it needs to be, and to keep our schools at state-of-the-art as they are.
I know one of the issues that you ran on and that we've talked about, I know all the supervisors have discussed this with you, that has really been the formula for education funding in the suburbs. And I believe you've indicated that's going to be a top priority for you to address.
It has to be, because people are being squeezed, and their school taxes are extremely expensive to live here. So as you mentioned, the state aid formula is something that's really been outdated for decades, and it's something that I think politicians every year say they're going to go up to fix, and unfortunately it gets stalled up in Albany. So it's something that I want to fight for, to make sure that state aid formula gets corrected once and for all, because I think it'll really be a game changer to allow people whose kids may have graduated from school to be able to stay here in those post-school years.
And obviously, that's one of the top issues. What do you see as some of the other issues that you're going to be looking to address?
Well, bail reform. A lot of the concerns of our residents, and we heard them when we knocked on nearly 15,000 doors, people are very concerned about crime. And they know that the bail reform bill has been a disastrous law that was put into place a number of years ago. The crime may not be as rampant here in Rockland County, but we see what goes on in the city. A lot of our residents, probably a lot of your friends, work in the city. They like to go to the city for entertainment purposes, and they're concerned that the crime that is running rampant in New York City will come into the suburbs, and that's a high priority that we want to go up to Albany and fix.
Right, and I know that there's been lots of talk about it, and obviously I think that there's been some changes in Albany. You're one of how many freshman senators now?
8. So on the Republican side, when I went up there for orientation a few weeks ago, there's 8 Republican freshman senators, which is one of the largest classes in a generation.
Yeah, so literally and they're from all around the state, correct? Long Island, upstate?
Yeah, so predominantly the Long Island, Suffolk County, Nassau County had a big flip from Democrat to Republican. The Hudson Valley, my seat, did change, and only a few changes upstate New York. In fact, the one race that was just settled, I believe, yesterday outside Syracuse, there was over 130,000 votes cast, and the Democrat candidate won by 10 votes.
Wow. Yeah, it's when people say their vote doesn't really mean anything or it doesn't count, it does, and particularly when you look at races like that. I know you won, by a fairly comfortable margin over the prior senator, but more importantly, there sometimes races will come down to that, and we've seen situations with races being decided, down at the single-digit votes. I know a number of years ago we had a councilman who won by 12 votes here.
Right. In fact, Kate Luciani, which ran in Colin Schmidt's district, which covers the Stony Point section of Rockland County, she lost by 8 votes out of 36,000 votes cast. So, I've looked at the success that you've had, Ed Day has had, Mike Lawler has had. You got to knock on doors. The old adage of, knocking on doors really does make a difference, because people appreciate the fact that you're willing to come to their doors in an unfiltered manner and talk to them about issues that are important. And I believe that the success that we had on election night was really the groundwork we laid over the summertime, knocking on those doors, I think gave us the success on November 8th.
What are some of the other things that you're hoping to accomplish as our state senator?
Sure. So the fiscal issue is a big issue. Not only the school aid and taxes on local taxes, but the state budgets have gone up by $40 million over the last number of years, and it's a big issue that we need to really correct. And I'm a big believer that government should be spending stuff on priority items. We'd all love to have everything for free, but it's not realistic. Somebody actually has to pay the bill. So I want to go to Albany to use my financial experience to make sure that we have sound budgeting, like you do in Clarkstown, like the other towns do here locally. We need to have that same sound fiscal policies up in Albany, because for far too long they've just let things run rampant, and unfortunately it's made New York very expensive to live, and most people have moved out of New York and continue to move out because they can't afford to live here. So I want to go to Albany to make sure that things are more affordable for us here at the local level. And
obviously, being a CPA gives you a very unique perspective to bring to Albany.
Yeah.
I got to imagine there are not a lot of CPAs that are in the Senate.
In fact, this class, myself and a woman from Long Island on the Republican side, she's a CPA and an attorney. I think we're the first two. So, I think we bring a breath of fresh air. We bring private experience, private sector experience, that I think we can utilize our experience in Albany and really show them something different, or at least a different way of governance, that private sectors, companies have to use sound fiscal and budgetary processing in order to make sure that you have a sound budget.
Yeah, I know one of the things that we kind of dealt with here in Clarkstown, and 2022 will be our 4th consecutive year in the black, and the town hasn't done that in 25 years. And what it required was really being honest with the budgetary process, being realistic, being honest, and really taking a look at what your priorities were. And you had to say yes to some things and say no to some other things. We did some restructuring. We were able to get some concessions on some union contracts, and it all kind of becomes part of the stew, if you will, in the mix. And the end product is, hopefully, you've got a budget that's sustainable and balanced. And we've, my first year as town supervisor, we had a $7 million budget deficit. And at the time, the budget was $155 million, and we cut taxes 2 of my first 3 years as town supervisor. But I inherited a budget that was $7 million, in the red. And thankfully, we've been able to turn it around. So I certainly wish you much success as you tackle, the state budget crisis in Albany, because it's a budget crisis.
It is, and in fact, the governor budget office released a few months ago that over the next 5 years they project a $13.5 billion shortfall, because their revenue expectations are coming in lower than what they expected, and they've done what I call legacy costs. They've put programs into place that they're not going to be able to pay for, coupled with the fact that states and local municipalities got a whole bunch of federal bailout money over the last during COVID, and that money is going to run out. So we have to, like you said, you'd love to say yes to everybody, to every constituent group, to every program, because all these programs are great. It's just you have to live within the fiscal limitations that you're dealt with, because if you don't, then you'll have a shortfall. Then you'll have to raise taxes considerably, which really compounds the issue itself. So when you have sound budget policies like Clarkstown has had, like Rockland County has had over the last number of years, I think it makes for a better sound policy. And it's something that I want to go to Albany to try and instill to them, that it's the way to do it.
And so just tell us a little bit about what it's like up in Albany. I know you've been up there for some orientation sessions, and you're starting, hitting the ground running. But what's the schedule like? Just for our viewers, what's the life of a senator like? Sure.
So we had orientation a few weeks ago, and they came out with the calendar. So you're in session from January 4th until the 1st or 2nd week of June. You're generally up there 3 days a week. When it gets closer to budget season, which is the end of March, you're up there for full weeks at a time. And then from June till December, you're really back in your district office full time. That doesn't mean when you're up there in Albany between January and June that you're not spending a lot of time back in your district, because you are. You're coming back and forth. And the nice thing about living close enough to Albany, meaning in only an hour and 50 minutes away, is you're able to come back and forth even within that Monday through Wednesday time frame to really come and talk to the residents about their issues and concerns. So, you know, it's a full schedule. You're on various committees, which they haven't assigned yet, but we've put in for some high priority committees that we'd like to be on. So, you know, life as a senator, I don't have government experience, which is why I felt it very important to have someone as my chief of staff who has been in Albany for a long time, someone who can guide me through the legislative process and then spend the rest of the budget that I have for my staff within the district, because all politics is local, and really the way that we're going to be successful as a legislator is to make sure that we're really hands-on with all of our community needs here in the district.
So if people want to get in contact with you, where's your office located?
So it'll be at 163 Airport Executive Park in Nanuet. For people that don't know, it's right near Costco. They could also get in touch with us on Facebook and also with the New York State Senate website. Great.
Really excited for you, Bill. You know, I think you're going to do a great job. You know, you're bringing, as somebody once described you, you know, to me, you're like the common reasonable person. And it's good to have, you know, a bean counter going to Albany to help us, you know, count the beans up there, because there's a lot of beans to be counted in the state budget. And we need to continue to try and do what we can to make New York affordable. And we know that you're going to do that for us up in Albany.
Thank you very much, George.
So, thanks. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Email from school about the incident today.
Scary.
You know, teachers like me, parents, we don't always know as much as you guys do about what's going on with other kids.
Half the time, it's rumors.
Yeah, but if you're ever concerned about a friend who's having trouble with alcohol, prescription drugs, anything, you need to tell an adult, someone you know and trust. That can be hard, but speaking up about a problem is what helping a friend is all about.
Welcome back. My next guest, Lou Romano, is a successful businessman and a prolific author who started writing at the age of 58. He's completed 20 books, including 2 that are being considered by major motion picture studios for feature films. Welcome, Lou.
Thank you, George. Welcome. I'm welcome. Thank you for having me.
And Lou, I'm delighted to have you on. I've gotten to know you over the last year. We both belong to a cigar club,
Yep.
For full disclosure, and probably one of the best decisions I made recently, joining that club. And
Thank you. It's a great place.
You know, great place, and getting to meet a bunch of the guys. But I was fascinated when we met to learn how many books that you've written. I mean, my first question is, there are probably people watching this program that haven't read 20 books.
I'm sure.
You know, let alone now written them. And so how'd you become an author? What made you decide to do it?
Well, I started at 58 years old, and that's an old age to start writing. I had always been in the creative area in my mind, and I worked in the oil industry and the energy industry and raised the kids, put them in school, and then I decided to do what I wanted at 58. And it's just been a great ride. I've met so many wonderful people like yourself and others, and it's just been a great ride. I'm what's called a crossover author, which means I have different genres.
Right. So let's talk about some of the genres that you've written in, because you've got some great books, and you have a local connection here. You don't live in the county, but you have connections into the county. You've lived in the county in the past.
I have. I went to Rockland Community College, which I think is the best school I've gone to, and I went to 3, graduate school, undergraduate school, and RCC was terrific. A professor there sparked my interest in writing in 1968.
Wow.
When I started there. Yeah.
So what are some of the genres that you've actually written?
Crime, true crime, which I'm not really happy with. Fictional crime, which I have a whole series of books, and I have a fictional, which Intercession, which is the terrific book. That's going to be a motion picture, I believe, and that's a serial killer series of 6 books.
Right, and I've read several of your books now. And
thank you.
Shonda is really an interesting one as well. But before we get into some of your books, just tell me about the creative process. I mean, so you've been writing now for 14 years?
Yeah, 14, 15 years.
And you've written, so you're pumping out more than one book a year.
Right.
It probably didn't start that quickly. I mean, if you how long did it take you to get the first book done?
Oh my God, I put the book under the table for almost a year, and I wasn't happy with it. I'm still not happy with it. Fish Farm, but people were happy about it. I wasn't. I'm still not. But it's like a child. You raised a child, and you still look and see flaws. But that was my first book, and it was a lot of fun. And then I wrote Bessa about the Albanian mafia, and that became a series. and then Intercession, which became a series, which is my favorite series. I got to say that. But we're continuing to play.
I asked you this once before, and I'll do it again just to get the reaction. But what's your favorite book?
Can't say. It's like having, I have 3 sons. I might have a favorite here, but I can't say it because I can't insult the other 2 kids. I think my most favorite book is the one I'm writing right now. Right. So.
And you're in the midst of one right now. What's the theme for that one?
Well, I'm writing a book about the gypsies, which we can't call gypsies anymore. They're Romany people. And I'm in the middle of the research. And that's part of the process. The research takes months to finish. And then the writing process is the easy part. The editing process is painful, especially because I can't speak the English language and I don't know spelling at all and grammar. So I have people that help me do that. But I'm a storyteller and I enjoy doing it.
So Shonda, tell us a little bit about Shonda. And the reason I want to ask about that is some of the research, because you did a lot of research.
Up in Rockland County, up in Muncie and Spring Valley and areas like that. It's about the Hasidic Jews who are being shot at by a crazy lunatic, and I think it's very pro-Jewish. I would never be anti-Semitic. I grew up as a Shabbos Goy in the 50s, if you know what that means, George. And I was raised to love the Jewish people, and it's a murder mystery, and that's what it's about.
And so essentially, from reading Shonda, basically it's a gentleman whose father dies, and he blames the father's death. He's got emotional issues.
He does
on Hasidic people, and then literally starts to target them as
right. He blames COVID on getting it from the Hasidic Jews in Muncie, which it didn't. But of course, the kid was emotionally disturbed, like you said, and he starts taking shots at them. And it's a good book, I think.
Now, you did a lot of research into the community and also with the police. And tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Barry Work at the club? Yeah. He's very pro-Jewish, and he's Jewish by religion, and he helped me tremendously because he got me into knowing all the rules and regulations of the Jewish community and Shabbos and stuff like that. He's terrific. And he had other people help me too, and a rabbi and so forth. So I was really involved with the community, trying to find out what makes them tick, because I'm being an Italian kid from the Bronx, what do I know about Hasidic Jews? And I learned tremendous amount from them. And it was just a great ride. Right.
You also connected with the police departments as well.
Oh, yeah.
So I highly recommend it. It's a very interesting read, and as you said, you put a very nice characterization on the Jewish community in the book as well.
Thank you.
Intercession. So let's talk a little bit about Intercession, because that's probably going to end up being a movie.
I hope so. The script is ready. We're taking it to see. I'm not, but they want me to come to California in January. I said, no, I refuse to come unless there's an offer on the table. No, I would never say that. That's my dream, is to get something in film. And it's about a serial killer who actually kills people who harm children, who molested kids. And the ending is very, very interesting. I can't say it because I'll ruin the whole story. But it's my bestseller. And it's something that's very close to me personally. So some people have said it's anti-Catholic, and it isn't, because some priests are murdered in the book. But it's anti-anybody who wants to hurt children. They could be a coach, they could be a rabbi, they can be a photographer. If they hurt children, this guy, John Deegan, goes after them. And the cops are chasing him all over the world. And they catch up to him in Rome, but I'm not going to say anything more. Rome, Italy.
Well, listen, I hope for your sake it does become a movie, because you'll actually probably go to Rome when they're filming it. Right?
Oh, absolutely. That's my hope. This is actually the third cover, George. The cover was first a crucifix with a bloody stump on it, and they didn't like it. And then it was a priest. And and my new marketing people said this is a better cover. So we keep changing. That's it then. I'm not changing it anymore.
So Lou, one of the things we had talked about before the program, and when I had you on my radio program, was just some interesting statistics about the number of books that are published. But what does a typical book sell, and what does somebody make off of a book? So maybe you could tell us some of those statistics.
300,000 new books, new titles, they're called titles, a month in the United States. That's over 3 million books. So how does somebody find Intercession? How do they find Shonda? How do they find my new book, On the Side of the Road, which I wrote with John Gokai? How do they find that? It's all marketing. How much do you make? Well, I'm a fancy guy. I can wear this thing. I think you make about $1.50 a book if you're lucky, and maybe $2 on. So you can't make any money in the publishing business unless you're Dan Brown and get a $5 million advance. To me, I made my money in my life and my career. This is just a passion. If a movie comes out, who knows what they'll offer? It's not going to be millions, but it'll be something. It'll be fun. But the real rush is seeing your name on the screen. To me, that's the real rush. I'm too long in the tooth, too old to make a career out of writing books and making any money at it. So it's nothing about money. But the average author will make a couple of bucks. The average, guess how many books sell? Just say this book, On the Side of the Road, that we published. Guess how many books this will sell?
1,000 copies, 5,000
If
copies?
it sells 5,000 copies, bestseller to me. I know authors who have 200 copies sold.
Wow.
And they put a year or two into the book, maybe 5 years into the book with research. And if they sell 200 books, it's a lot. There's so many books out there. And I'm on Amazon and all the places, Barnes & Noble, and I do book signings, and it's just a passion.
Now, you've had some books that have sold 10,000 or more, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Intercession, Bessa. But I've had books that sold 200 copies.
Right.
And it's like, why? It's a good book. You know, you get sort of like a baby about it, but it's a lot of fun.
Wow, it's and you wouldn't know. It's very interesting because the whole publishing industry has changed as well. It used to be, you would sell a book, they would print out a whole bunch, a certain number of copies, and that would be the first run.
Right.
And they would be like in a warehouse somewhere. But now it's basically literally you order it and then they print it and then.
Yeah, it's called POD, print on demand.
Right.
So if you order my book from Amazon, they print it, not Amazon, but a company prints it today, and they ship it out, and in 2 days you get the book.
Right.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for somebody, I've had a number of people talk to me in the past about they're trying to get started in the creative field as a writer. What do you recommend? What would your advice be to somebody that wants to pursue this as a passion?
I love that question because I'm asked it very often. Do it. Just write. Write it. Don't worry about the syntax. Don't worry about the spelling. Don't worry about the grammar. Just write it and get your thoughts down. And don't worry about making $1 or $2 or $8 a book. Don't worry about that. Worry about getting your thoughts on the page and go from there. That's my advice to you. Just write.
And when you write, you have a goal for yourself each day? How many words?
1,500 words a day, no matter what.
And what does that translate into page-wise?
It depends on the page size, the book size. 10 pages, 12 pages, 15 maybe. Books are about 350 pages, so it takes about 5 weeks to do the manuscript, and I don't take a day off. Right. I do it every single day. I may do 3,000 one day, but I don't lose the 1,500 mark. I want that 1,500 a day. Okay. And people say, block, writer's block. Yeah. I don't believe in that. Mm-hmm. If you've got a story in your head, it comes. Okay. Yeah.
So have you had periods of writer's block?
No.
No?
No, I'm very lucky with that. I have story block. In other words, right now I'm doing this story about the gypsies, and I'm doing tremendous research on the gypsy people. I'm sorry to use that pejorative, but we know it as gypsies. And I don't have the story yet in my mind. It's going to be a murder, of course, because I'm not going to write a love story. Or maybe I can. I could make it both. Maybe I shall. See, I'm still writing the book in my mind. Yeah.
So you're still trying to flush that out.
Yeah, and then I do an outline and work from the outline.
And then do the outline, and then basically the outline kind of gives you like the story flow, and then you just write from that.
Right from that.
Have you written a book where the outline has changed?
Oh, it changes the day I start writing.
Okay.
Yeah. So the characters, George, sometimes take over. It sounds a little weird, right? But I am a little weird. The characters always write their own dialogue. Because you get into the character. I mean, I am not fit to live with for the 5 weeks that I'm writing because I'm looking at you and we're talking and I'm going like this and I'm thinking about the dialogue that the characters are going to say and they say it themselves. So it's a fun thing for me.
Wow. So, and I love the phrase that you said, that the characters write the dialogue themselves, because, I would imagine with the creativity, so you're kind of being like, I guess, De Niro, right?
Right.
I don't want to blow your head up, Eddie, but literally De Niro was like a method actor. He
Yes.
immersed himself into the character.
Yes.
And that whole school of method acting. And so literally writing, you're kind of immersing yourself into the character.
Absolutely.
And then giving expression through the writing.
Yeah, John Deegan is the murderer in Intercession, and I relate to him. I'm not a murderer. I've never hurt anybody, but I relate to him because I know his passion for trying to save children. So I relate to John a lot, and I think about him a lot, frankly, because he's in 6 books.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we're just about out of time, but how does somebody get a hold of your books? Where can they order them?
Well, of course, Amazon or BarnesandNoble.com, but my website is Louis, L-O-U-I-S, RomanoAuthor.com.
Okay, LouisRomanoAuthor.com.
And then they get an autographed book.
And not only get an autographed book, but you cut out the middleman there too as well, which
Yeah,
is better. And all of your books would be there, right?
Every one of them is there, yes.
Now, we're kind of past time, but I do want you to just mention, you have a very interesting book that I'm actually, and thank you for the copy, I'm actually going to be giving out at the middle school when I go read the middle school. It's about zip code. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's about, it's a young adult book. Mm-hmm. It's not being able to, your zip code doesn't tell you where you should be in life. So if you're from a poor family in the Bronx, you shouldn't be held down. If you're from a rich family in, I don't know, Ridgewood, New Jersey, you shouldn't think that highly of yourself because people are people. And I think it's a great thing for young adults to read. It's in a lot of schools now, as a matter of fact.
Right. It'll be in the schools up here in Clarkston that I read in as well. So I'm looking forward to, when I get into the middle school, to read, in the spring. I read in about a dozen schools every year in the town, and I always donate a book. So
thank you.
So I'm delighted that you gave me a couple of copies of that. And
that's great. I love the book myself.
We'll get them autographed and sent over to the schools.
Yeah, being from the projects in the South Bronx, I sort of relate to this book, so that gave me the impetus to do that.
So, Lou, just give your website address one more time.
Louis Romano, L-O-U-I-S, Romano, author.com.
Well, Lou, you've been a great guest, good friend.
Thank you, George.
And
You're great.
Really delighted having you on the show, and we wish you all the best. And you'll have to let us know if Intercession gets picked up.
Oh, you'll be the first.
Good.
Okay.
Good.
Thanks, George.
So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
So I wanted to talk with you and your mom today, Lily, because of some of the changes your friends and teachers have seen in you lately. And along with the incident the other day, you were with Derek when he was caught selling marijuana.
Yeah, he was selling it.
Honey, we know. But we care about you and want to know what's going on.
That's right. We'd like to understand it better and see how we might help. And if weed is a part of it, we want to make sure you know about the negative consequences for someone your age. So, can we talk?
Talk. They hear you.
Welcome back. Our final guest is our veteran segment. It's Mark Woods. Mark is a U.S. Army veteran, a retired member of the NYPD. He has a background working in intelligence in the police department. He currently serves as the director of the Joseph P. Dwyer Peer Mentoring Program. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, Mark, we've talked before, and we've had you on the program in the past, but I'd like to really talk a little bit about your background first, and then we'll get into the Dwyer program, which is under Bridges, which is a great organization. So maybe you could tell us just a little bit about your service in the U.S. Army.
I started in the New York Army National Guard when I was 17. I joined when I was still in high school. I enjoyed the military, so I decided to go to a military college in South Carolina, the Citadel. Because I went to that school, I was able to get a commission as a second lieutenant in the infantry. I served for 4 years in the Army during that stint. I was in Germany, and I did a 6-month tour with under the UN umbrella in what is now the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia.
So what years were you actively in?
Really, that was 92 to 96 was my first stint in the active Army in Germany. So I was in Germany from 92 to 96.
And then you got out?
So I got out. I did a couple other various jobs. I was a corrections officer. I worked for immigration in Texas. And then I came home to join the NYPD. I spent 20 years with the NYPD. I served in the intelligence division. I did vice, human trafficking, and the Joint Terrorism Task Force. But in the middle of that, after 9/11, I was recalled back to the active Army to go serve for a year in Iraq.
Wow. And so you have combat experience in Iraq?
I did. I spent 1 year to the day. They kept us there exactly 365 days. So it was interesting.
And so you obviously take that wealth of experience with you working with veterans in the Dwyer program. Before we get to that, though, just you have a fascinating background. It's really multifaceted, and you touched on a lot of different levels in the police department. Can you just touch briefly on the work with the Joint Terrorism Task Force? I'm always interested in that because we actually have an officer here in Clarkstown that's on the Joint Terrorism Task Force.
To me, that was always the top of the ladder. You spend your whole career trying to get to the Joint Terrorism Task Force because it is a very specialized department. You're actually deputized as a Special Deputy U.S. Marshal, so you have federal credentials. You work side by side with all the various federal agencies, the FBI, the CIA's there, everybody's there. You're in an undisclosed location. I first started working there. I was there for 4 years. I worked on a team that studied Iran and the IRGC, so it was a lot of overseas stuff in Africa. And then my second half of the time there, I was in ISIS, was big. This was in 2015, 2016, and I was doing ISIS cases in and around New York City.
Right. So what would you describe as your dream job in your career so far?
Well, you know, my dream job was when I was doing human trafficking. To me, that was the most satisfying work. I had a very good relationship with the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, and that was the closest I'd ever have to what you'd see on TV as the NYPD Blue, you know, or Law and Order. It was the closest to that. I was doing a lot of big, long investigations, wiretaps, and I was spending a lot of time with the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. I had a very good relationship with them, and it was the freest time I ever had. I could make my own cases, and I could work cases as long as I was producing. That was my best time there. The Joint Terrorism Task Force came calling, and I felt like because of my background and experience, it was a natural progression. But I really look at my time doing human trafficking with underage girls as the most satisfying work that I ever did with the police department.
Right. And you also have a background as an undertaker as well, right?
I do. I also am a funeral director. I went to school in 2015 to become a funeral director. I found that I didn't like the embalming side of it so much. But what I do is I teach. I'm an adjunct professor at the school for aspiring funeral directors. So I keep my license. I do a little bit of work on the side, but the majority of what I do with my license is I teach students coming in. I teach history of funeral service, which is very interesting, what all the different cultures do and how they honor their dead. And I also teach psychology of funeral service, how you deal with different ages, deal with death, and how we cope with loss.
Well, so you're really, if I could describe a Renaissance person, you're probably it. You know, you also like MMA. So
I do. I like to have my
we
fingers on all the strings.
We won't hold that against you. You know? But let's pivot now. I mean, we have and we've seen in the United States real issues with our veterans as they come home. You know, they're going 90 miles an hour in a combat zone. We had conflict in Afghanistan for 20 years. We've had perpetual deployments in combat areas for the better part of the last 3 decades. And so we have a whole generation of soldiers that have experienced the horrors of combat in ways in which they maybe didn't experience in other eras in our country. And then guys are coming from that situation, guys and gals are coming from that situation going home, and the demons start to flow. They bury it, they don't deal with it. And consequently, we're seeing a significant rise in suicides. And so the Joseph P. Dwyer program is actually a program that was started in New York State. It's across the country, but it really brings veterans together and to create a peer mentoring relationship. And you're the director of that program with Bridges. So can you tell us a little bit about the numbers of vets that unfortunately take their own lives via suicide each year, and some of the things that you do with the Dwyer program to help our vets?
Sure. The textbook answer, what everybody always hears, is that there's 22 veteran suicides a day. Studies have been done to show that that number is as high as 44 because they don't take into account things that car accidents or things that probably were self-inflicted but are not 100% classified as a suicide. So the number could be as high as 44 a day, which is just really outrageous. Veterans come home from service, they discharge out of the military, they don't have a plan, they lose a bit of identity, they lose a bit of themselves, they don't know what to do. For me, it was different because I went into the police department. I jumped right back into an organization that gave me an identity, it gave me a purpose. If you don't have something like that to jump into, Sometimes you get a little bit lost. So you have a lot of the younger veterans who don't know what to do with themselves. They kind of get lost. They miss the structure of the military. That's all they've ever known. And they start to struggle with drug and alcohol abuse. They struggle with the loss of identity, the loss of themselves, and they wind up committing suicide. And then on the flip side, you have the older generation, the Vietnam era, who've retired now. They've left their jobs. Now they're home. They've got time to think. They're retired, and they start to have I'm seeing a lot of the Vietnam era veterans come to our program who are suffering with late PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, what really didn't have so much symptoms back while they were working, but now that they're retired and they're home, a lot of the memories are coming flooding back. So I've got a good variety of younger veterans coming in and older veterans. We have a good mix from pretty much every generation, from World War II all the way down to guys who just got out of the military, within a year, coming into our program.
So when I recently I stopped at the very end of your one of your holiday gatherings, and I think you had 100 people there, which was an impressive number. And you just do such great work. And literally, what you try and do is partner these guys up, get them to kind of come out. And again, because one vet, his experience might be different, but they're more likely to share the experiences with one another than they are with people that don't have that same experience, correct?
It's correct. You tell a veteran, well, we're going to have a support group to talk about PTSD, very clinical nature. Nobody comes. But if you say, we're going to have a lunch and we're going to go walk around the mall just to talk, it becomes a support group without saying it's a support group. They'll open up and they'll talk to each other. They'll talk to me, we'll talk to different generations, because we all have that common experience, which was service. And it always comes back to it. We always want to talk about it, whether we say it or not, and who better to talk about it than to each other, and we can relate. So,
right. Yeah. So the Dwyer program now, it's been around for a good number of years, but roughly how many people would you say are participating in aspects of the Dwyer program?
I'd say per month we have about 500 veterans who interact with us in one way or another, whether it be coming to our monthly social at the street school here in Clarkstown, or if they're going to come to our weekly walk at the mall, or just interact through phone calls, check-ins. We have a mentoring program where veterans speak to other veterans. So some way or another, we have about 500 interactions per month from veteran to veteran. And this is not including the VA, this is just person to person.
Okay.
So.
Good. And some of the other stuff that you do social events, you also assist them in trying to get connected with benefits and things of that nature?
I sort of see us as like the 911, whatever the veteran's issue is, homelessness, drug or alcohol abuse, they're looking for employment, veterans benefits. I'm kind of the one stop for everything. Let me know what you need, and I've been in the county working in the veteran business for 5 years now, so I kind of know where to direct the veteran. So I have all of the exterior services. I know where to get the veteran to, but then we also have stuff that we do amongst ourselves. We have a writing workshop we're going to be starting in January. We have a cooking class we do once a month for veterans. We partner with People to People, the food pantry. So we do a lot of different events, and it's during these events that the veteran will open up and start to talk about deeper problems they have. While we're sitting there cooking or eating or doing our walk, they'll open up about drug or alcohol issues or mental health. Hey, I'm not sleeping well. And that's really where it all comes out and where we get our down to the nitty-gritty of the Dwyer work.
So how does somebody get in contact with you in the Dwyer program?
So the easiest way is just to stop in the mall. We're located at the Palisades Mall on the second floor. We're right next to the Autobahn race cars, so we're on the far end by Best Buy. And if you just come in and say you're a veteran, or if you know a veteran who's suffering, come in and ask for me. I'm there Monday through Friday, and I'll come out and speak to you. Or you can call us. We have my cell phone number. I give it out to everyone. It's 845-521-9440. Or we could email me, and I'll give my email information out. You could email me, and I encourage people whenever I speak to a group. I say, "Is there any veterans here?" And then you get a few people scatter and raise their hand. But then I say, "Does anybody here know a veteran?" And that's where I get a lot of my referrals from. Is people say, "My next door neighbor is a veteran. He's shut in, and I'm kind of concerned about him." And then I'll do outreach, or have one of my mentors go and do outreach. And so everybody knows a veteran. So if anybody has an issue or thinks a veteran's having an issue, I encourage them to reach out to me.
I think one of the nicest things I've seen with the Dwyer program, and we've talked about it off camera in the past, is that you're seeing an intergenerational connection with these vets. You're seeing the Vietnam vets that, as they're starting to deal with issues of trauma, as you've talked about with post-traumatic stress, that they're dealing with some of those issues and they're connecting with some of the younger vets. And it's that commonality that they've gone through, you know, unless you've actually faced, you know, a situation where somebody's trying to kill you, and you don't know what it's like. And you could go to somebody who's not a vet, who didn't go through that experience, and it's like, yeah, you don't know what you're talking about. But you put two vets together, even though it's a vet that maybe served 50 years ago, you know, was in that situation, as opposed, and you know, vet who served, you know, 30 or 40 years later in Afghanistan or Iraq or, you know, some other location. And there's been a real nice melding and connection between those older vets and the younger vets, helping each other kind of deal with the issues that they face.
I saw that. It was amazing. I had a 34-year-old veteran of Iraq and Afghanistan, but he really had a rough time with his Afghanistan tour. And when Afghanistan fell, it was almost 50 years to the day that Saigon fell. And we had a Vietnam veteran and a Afghanistan veteran, and I watched the two of them sort of mentor up, and that is exactly what the program is for. They would go off walks together, and they would sit and talk and eat together, and it really became a really nice mentoring experience. It was helping the Vietnam veteran, but it was also helping the Afghanistan veteran. They kind of helped each other through it. I didn't have the same experience in Iraq as they had in Afghanistan and they had in Vietnam. So it's a nice meld. It always seems to come together, and pairs are made, and that's where the healing begins, I think. So. Well,
you're really doing God's work, and I want to thank you for your service. You know, your 20 years of active duty and your service in the NYPD. But importantly, this is really great work that you're doing with the Joseph P. Dwyer program. You're helping to save lives and improve lives, and we commend you for that.
Thank you. I mean, I can't believe it's the first job where I've actually enjoyed going to work. I love getting up in the morning. I love going there. I love interacting with veterans because, you know, who else gets to do, you know, work with their peers like this? It's just it's a great job and a great opportunity. I love doing it.
Great. And just give your phone number one more time.
So my cell phone is 845-521-9440. It's my cell phone, so I answer it all the time. And if you have a question about the program, you want to get on our email list, we do 4 or 5 activities a week. Something will appeal to everybody. Just give me a call. We'll put you on the email list, and we'd love you to join us. Every Wednesday, we're at the mall at 9:30. We meet in front of Bridges on the 2nd floor, and we do our walk, and that's a great introduction to the program. Just come walk with us, talk to us, and you know, see where the program works for you.
Great. Well, Mark Woods, thanks for being a great guest, and thank you for your service.
Well, thanks for having me.
So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Matthew.
I know that a lot of times, Mom, it might not seem like I'm listening to you, but I am. And what you say really does matter to me.
All the talks we've had over the years, including what you've told me about not using alcohol and other drugs, they stick with me, and they make a difference, especially at times that matter most.
Hey, want a drink?
No thanks, I'm good. So thank you, Dad, for preparing me for what's ahead.
Thanks, Mom, for always being my biggest fan.
Thank you for talking.
Talk. They hear you.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. I want to thank my guest, our new state senator, Bill Weber, a prolific author with local ties, Lou Romano, and in our veteran segment, Mark Woods from the Joseph Dwyer Peer Mentoring Program. Until next time, I'm Supervisor George Homan, and thanks for joining us.